Alright folks, we're going to make our sweet potato bisque with shrimp and crab. And a little secret trick I like to do is I always keep shrimp shells in the freezer whenever I peel shrimp. And don't buy those tiger shrimp, buy good white, brown, or pink shrimp, preferably Gulf or domestic. And then I take a tiny bit of vegetable oil, put it in a pan, just a couple teaspoons, and then I add the shrimp shells. Saute those for about 3-4 minutes on high heat. Get a little color to them. So they got some nice color on them. I'm going to add a splash of white wine or vermouth. You don't need to, but it's nice. And then I'm just going to add some good old-fashioned store-bought chicken broth. Now, if you don't have the shrimp shells, you can certainly just use chicken broth. It's just that these shells will add a really nice seafood background to the broth. And since the garnish is all shrimp and crab, these shrimp shells are really going to make a difference in the detail of the soup. Okay, in the pot, carrots, onions, celery, leeks, garlic, a little bit of fresh ginger, and a little bit of plain vegetable oil, and that's going to soften for about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, you can see the vegetables are visibly wilted. I don't want them to color. I just want them nice and wilted. I'm going to add a little bit of curry powder, and for those of you who don't like curry powder, I'm adding such a little bit that it's almost unnoticeable, but it really accents the sweet potatoes. If you absolutely hate curry powder, leave it out. But if not, notice how little I'm putting in. This is a big pot of soup, and I'm putting in about 2 teaspoons of curry, and that's about it. I'm also adding a pinch of J.O. with the salt, Chesapeake Bay seasoning. Again, you're not really going to notice this, but it accentuates the seafood flavor, the crab flavor. It's a little bit unorthodox, but it rocks. And that oil is going to toast up those spices and really develop their flavor. So, always a good move. Toast your spices. Okay, now I've added my sweet potatoes to this pot, and now I'm going to add our broth. And I just boiled it for 10 minutes and let those shrimp shells just steep in there like tea. And I'm just going to hang my strainer right over the pot, and I just strain my broth right into it. A couple shrimp shells fell in there. And I want these to be covered by a little more than an inch. So what I'm just going to do is just add some plain water to cover. Okay, it's cold and it's rainy, but I'm going to grab a few herbs from my little wintertime herb garden here. Ooh. See what we got. A little bit of fresh thyme. Don't need much. Little piece of rosemary. And a couple bay leaves. Alright, there's my herbs. A little bit of freshly ground black pepper, pinch of salt, and I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Easy on the salt if you're using the broth from the store. I use a low sodium broth, but still, once this reduces, it could get a little salty. And for those of you who haven't noticed, it is very important to use a pot the exact same color as sweet potatoes. Okay, came up to a boil. I've turned it down to a nice, gentle simmer. And you always want to gently simmer. You don't want to boil anything except pasta. And now I will partially cover it. Okay, soup's been going about a half an hour. And as you can see, the sweet potatoes just mash up against the side of the pot. You want to make sure that the hardest vegetables, like the carrots here, just mash up, which this one does. Now you could transfer this to a blender in batches, which is very dangerous, or you can use the handy dandy Braun or other brand immersion blender and start blending. It takes a little while. You want to keep doing this until this soup is completely smooth. Could take about 3 or 4 minutes. So you can see how velvety and smooth that soup is. I'm looking for any leftover chunks. You could just keep going and it'll just get smoother and smoother and smoother. But this is pretty velvety. And for those paying attention, I did put 2 or 3 small potatoes, regular like Yukon Gold potatoes in there. They tend to make it a little more velvety and a nice viscosity to the soup. So it really is a sweet potato soup, but there's a couple potatoes in there. And now I'm just going to taste this for salt and pepper and adjust if necessary. Now I'm going to add, I don't know, it's about half a pound of shrimp. And like a pound of jumbo lump crab meat. Save a little. Rockstar. Just throw that in. Let the shrimp cook and the crab meat heat through. And here is our beautiful finished soup with some huge chunks of crab meat floating through it, a little dill, some chives. You could thin it out if you like it a little thinner with a little water or broth, but it is fantastic. I hope you enjoy this recipe. I hope you give it a try. Bye-bye.